Hi Cozy Dewdrops, welcome back to the channel. Today I'm diving into the best camera settings in Infinity Nikki. We're covering everything from unlocking modifications to advanced lighting and environmental effects. Whether you're a beginner or looking to up your photography game, stick around because I've got some aesthetic tips for you. First up, let's talk about unlocking camera features. In Infinity Nikki, you need to complete photography-related quests and expeditions to earn upgrade packs. These packs unlock lighting, poses, and filters. Don't skip those side quests. The Expedition Handbook even rewards you for taking specific types of photos. You can also unlock different poses from banner outfits and events. For the purposes of this tutorial, I'm going to restore everything to default settings, and we're going to go in order through each camera function. You can hide Nikki if you just want a landscape photo, and this function is also helpful if you need to do like a daily wish of taking like a picture of the Sovereign of Cool, something like that. Now let's get into focal length and zoom. Focal length, the distance between the lens and the sensor, affects the framing and depth of your shot. I typically set it at 55 millimeters for a sharp cinematic look, and then you can adjust the zoom outside of the detailed settings depending on how much of Nikki or the background that you want in the frame. Focal length essentially determines the field of view. Shorter lengths capture more of the scene, while longer lengths create a compressed, zoomed-in effect. Rotation is a neat trick to create fresh perspectives. Whether you're zooming in on Nikki's dress, details, or showcasing her makeup, rotating the image can offer a new angle. You can also rotate Nikki's body for a creative composition. This can also be helpful in poses, which we will touch on later. On PC, just hold the right click and drag to rotate outside of the actual rotation detailed tab. This will rotate Nikki's body. Aperture is key for controlling the depth of field. It lets you blur the background to keep the focus on Nikki. However, be cautious with this setting. If you put it too high, it can cause her to lose detail around her edges. I use it sparingly to add an ethereal vibe without overdoing it. You can also utilize lighting to get really cute lighting effects with this function. Aperture controls how much light enters the lens and affects the depth of field. A wider aperture, lower f-number, means more background blur, ideal for portrait shots. We have toggles for grids, NPCs, and Eurekas. Use the grid to help center your shot, the NPC toggle to hide non-player characters, and the Eureka option to remove the Eureka from your shot if it's not fitting the vibe that you want. A vignette darkens the edges of your photo, naturally drawing the viewer's eye towards the center where Nikki is located. Use this effect sparingly, only when you want to emphasize her. This will darken the periphery to create a focal point. To be honest, I don't really use this that much. Now let's talk about soft light intensity and range. Soft light intensity provides diffuse lighting that creates a gentle, gradual effect on your scene. Turning it down gives you a harsher, more defined shadow. I usually keep it a little bit high for a softer, welcoming vibe, but if you are into dramatic shadows, then definitely turn it down. Brightness adjusts the overall light intensity of your image. Lowering brightness can create a moody atmosphere, while increasing it gives a more vibrant look. I tend to lower brightness slightly on most of my photos, but there are times when I want a more softer look and I might increase it a little bit. Exposure and contrast are vital for setting the mood. Exposure controls the overall light intensity. Too high and it becomes washed out. Too low and it might be a little bit too dark. Contrast, on the other hand, increases the difference between the light and dark areas, adding depth. I like using a lower exposure with a slight contrast to create a more dramatic effect. Just remember, exposure equals brightness, contrast equals depth. Saturation controls the intensity or vividness of colors. I prefer lower saturation for a more natural look, but this really comes down to your own personal style. Experiment with both saturation and natural saturation to see what best complements your vibe. Next, let's talk about highlights and shadows. Highlights brighten the areas where light directly hits, like the shine on Nikki's hair, while shadows deepen the darker parts of your scene. Adjust these settings to add a 3D pop to your images, making Nikki stand out. Highlights boost the brightness of well-lit areas, shadows darken the low-light regions, giving your photo more dimension. Next, let's talk about poses. There are a lot of great poses to start out with that you can get creative with, but like I said earlier, there are also poses that come with different banner outfits or in-game outfits or by getting those upgrade packs and upgrading your poses section. Under poses, you have a slider that pauses Nikki's movements. This is perfect for capturing the exact moment that you want, freezing her hair, clothes to achieve that flawless shot. Make sure to rotate Nikki to gain different angles from your pose. On PC, just hold the right click and drag to rotate her body. I believe on an Xbox or a PS5 controller, you're going to be holding RB, but I could be wrong on that. I wanted to say that when you pause a pose, it doesn't affect the camera's technical settings, but it helps in timing the shot to align with showcasing your subject in action, making it a very important function. Pausing poses can lead us to our next subject, expressions. Currently, you can't manually change Nikki's facial expressions, but timing your shot with her natural expressions, like pausing it, and like here when her eyes are closed, you can add emotion to your photos. And of course, proper lighting and exposure enhance these subtle details, which I will showcase later. Lighting is probably the most important part in photography. I prefer using side or bottom lighting to add depth and texture to Nikki's features. This setting simulates natural lighting and can dramatically change the mood of your shot. Lighting direction and intensity influence how shadows and highlights form, which in turn affect the overall texture and realism of your photo. Remember with lighting that there are sliders that you can adjust if you want a more subtle look or a more intense look. Filters are all about personal style. They can drastically change the vibe of your image from warm golden hues to cool neutral tones. Experiment until you find the filter that perfectly complements your vision. I tend to stick with a neutral palette with a touch of golden light. Filters will adjust the color grading and overall tone of your image without altering the fundamental settings like exposure or aperture. Now let's combine time, place, and weather effects. Time of day, whether it's dawn, daylight, or sunset, affects the quality and direction of light in your shot. For instance, I love the soft glow of dawn and the dramatic colors of sunset. I like to face Nikki towards the light source to get the best lighting, unless I'm going for a more dramatic look here with like the sunset in the background. Equally important are the weather and area effects. Rain can create a gorgeous glass skin effect on Nikki, while certain areas like the Wishful Woods offer a unique atmospheric element that enhances your photo storytelling, and I'll show that in a second. But together, these settings can transform your image completely. I will show you a close-up of how detailed the rain can look on Nikki's face. This is a huge shout out to Mathastolas on Twitter, and her tutorial really helped me to nail the rainy glass look. I've tagged her in the description down below. Go show her page some love. Here are those like pretty lights in the Wishing Woods as like a backdrop with the exposure completely down. And then we also have the effect of the rain. Also, during dusk or dawn, you can actually obtain a sun glare or a rainbow light glare if your focal is like zoomed out. This is an example of that. I took this like when I first started playing the game, and I just thought it was such a pretty shot. So I just wanted to showcase and give like an example of what I personally would do taking a shot on top of the air balloon on Fireworks Isle. We have the beautiful clouds behind us. So I'll go ahead and let it play out and let you see how I go through all my different settings to get my perfect shot. And I'll just come back on when I completely have found the perfect shot. And then I'll show you what it's like when we don't do anything as well. So I'm not going to be talking too much. I'm just going to let you focus on what I'm doing. So this is what I would consider probably like my favorite type of shot here. Now, I do believe that some of the other filters were really pretty too. So again, personal preference, but let's take a look at what this would look like if we were just using default settings and we weren't actually using exposure, contrast, etc. So I will reset everything to default and just go back to the normal pose, and we're not even going to mess with focal length. And you will see that there's a huge difference in the shots, and I'll showcase them right after next to each other. To me, this is a really big difference. I mean, I you can consider both of them pretty, but the lighting on the right is just like so soft, so beautiful. And on the left, like you're not really seeing like Nikki's eyes glow, her hair isn't really shining that well. I do think that both can be considered pretty, but the one on the right is just more of like my personal style. But everybody's different, so let me know down in the comments which one you like better. One final thing that we do need to talk about is optimizing your settings. So if you're not able to achieve the looks or the photography that I have shown you, if you're not getting the smooth performance you need for these shots, you need to check your device settings. Optimizing your device ensures that Infinity Nikki runs lag-free, allowing you to focus on capturing the perfect moment without technical hiccups. So, while not a camera function, having the correct system settings ensures that your camera controls respond accurately, maintaining the integrity of your chosen exposure, brightness, and other settings. And so I've kind of just copy and pasted these from the official Discord, and they have also tweeted these out too if you don't follow them on Twitter or Instagram. But here are the recommended configurations. That wraps up our complete guide on mastering camera settings in Infinity Nikki. I hope you found these tips helpful and that you're inspired to experiment with your own photography. If you enjoyed this video, please hit that like button, subscribe for more photography and gaming content, and leave a comment sharing your favorite setting or shot. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope that you enjoy the rest of your day. Stay cozy.